Hey guys, my name is Rachel Elise. Welcome to my podcast. I'm starting this podcast because I want to tell you about what God has done in my life. And what he's done is like a crap load of healing. He's healed so many areas of my life. He's redeemed me and restored me. And I want that for you. Like you who's listening, you who's watching right now, I want God to heal you too. So I'm going to be sharing my testimony. I'm probably going to bring some friends in to share their testimonies as well. And so I thought that was a great place to start, is my testimony. So it's story time. When I was 19 years old, I got into a relationship, and this ended up being a 5-year relationship, which today is my longest relationship, and it was my first serious relationship. It was my first time being in love, and that relationship became my world. That person became my everything, and I dealt with so many different things that I've healed from since. Just to name a few: anxiety, depression, jealousy, low self-esteem, substance abuse. I dealt with all of that in my life, and mostly in that relationship. And within that, because of all of that, I started to lean on God, because that is the only thing I knew to do. A little background about me is I grew up in the church. I even was serving every week, but it was just kind of something that we did as a family. I just kind of showed up. I didn't actually have a relationship with God, but it wasn't until I was at the lowest of my lows that I really was desperate for God and called on his name, and I talked to him and prayed to him. And that was the start of it, is when I was in my lowest in that relationship. And man, that relationship, that one just became a toxic cycle. Break up, get back together, break up, get back together. And what it really came down to, or what he made me believe at the time, was that basically I wasn't good enough. Like I said, I was dealing with all those things, and he made me feel like that's the reason why the relationship wasn't working. That's why we were fighting, is because of my anxiety. And he made me feel like I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't worthy of love. Literally to the point where he had to tell me, I don't want to marry you. And still, after hearing that, I still didn't change my mind. Like, I still loved him and wanting to be with him. And I felt so torn that I could love someone who was not loving me in the way I deserved. And so we were just in this toxic cycle. And I remember the conversation that kind of ended it all. I remember his words exactly, because I was telling him that if this relationship is going to work out, like, we need God, like, because he's the one who's going to heal this. He's the one that's going to make this work. We need God in the center. And I remember he told me that, or he asked me, why do you keep bringing religion into this? And I had to take a step back, because, whoa, like, what do you mean? Why do I keep bringing religion into this? Like, my God is everything to me now. Like, he's everything. And that it took that. Like, out of all the hurtful things he said to me, it was that where I was like, okay, all right, we're not supposed to be together. And man, dealing with that rejection is one of the most painful things I've ever dealt with. And I know that means I've, like, had a pretty good life, but still, like, that rejection of me, of who I was, because he saw me like the raw, real version, unhealthy, crying, screaming version of me, and he couldn't accept that. He couldn't commit to that. And so dealing with that rejection was so painful. And I went into this season that I call intentional singleness, where I was like, okay, God, like, I want to heal from this, so I need you. Like, I needed to be just you and me. So I didn't date. I stopped watching Netflix because I didn't want to distract myself or numb the pain by binge watching shows. I wasn't on social media at the time, so that one was easy. And also, I stopped smoking weed, which that is a whole other episode in and of itself. But yeah, I stripped out all of these things out of my life, and I was super intentional about spending time with God, and that is where the real healing happened. And I am so grateful because, honestly, if I was healed while I was still in that relationship, I probably would have given credit to that relationship and credit to that person. But I truly believe, and I'm grateful for this, that I needed to be single while God healed me, because I needed to know that it was God. Like, that was all Him, no doubt about it. So, fast forward, started to heal, process all of this, and then I got into another relationship when I felt like I was ready. And that relationship didn't last too long, but it's funny because it ended up very, very similar. It ended up with me being rejected. It was a completely different relationship, but it was the same rejection. He couldn't accept me for my flaws. Even though I had come a long way and healed a lot, I wasn't good enough for him, or at least that's how I felt. But the funny thing is that I handled it differently. Like, it was the same rejection, but it didn't hurt as much. And that's because by then I have had an understanding that what seems to be rejection is actually God's redirection. Like if that person couldn't love me for me, then that was a very, very clear sign that that's not where I'm supposed to be. Like, God has something better for me, even though I had no idea what that was going to look like. I could trust that. I could trust that God was redirecting me to something better. And I'm now in that season, but again, that's a whole nother episode. Another thing that I learned in those relationships was that I was trying to fill a void with that person that only God could fill. So, for example, when I would have anxiety attacks, I would go to that person and ask them to comfort me and ask them to help me out. And really, that was unfair because, one, they weren't equipped to do that. And two, like, that's just unfair of me to ask something of them when it was just God. God is the one who needed to heal me. So I needed God to heal me before I got into another relationship. That was another thing I needed to learn. And lastly, I learned that love is my superpower. That's just like the broad statement that I came down to, but I I say that because in those relationships, in dealing with that rejection, I was so hurt because I loved these people. I genuinely loved these people like so much, but they couldn't love me back. They couldn't reciprocate that at that same level. And that was so hurtful to me. But then one day I realized that that's how God loves us. Like, before I had accepted his love, God loved me. Before I had acknowledged his love, he loved me. Before I even knew who God was, he loved me. And before I was even born, God loved me. Like, that was so mind-blowing to me. And then I started to think about all the times I had rejected God. How many times have I ignored God? How many times did I just didn't even care to spend time with him? And despite all that rejection, God still loves me. And man, that is an overwhelming thought, but also so empowering. One of the verses that I just always keep going back to, it's 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. It says, "For God gave us not a spirit of fear, but of power and love and self-control." And I truly believe that that same power of love that God has, he wants to give to us. And that's why we can love people so strongly, even people who reject us, people who can't accept us for who we are. Maybe for you, it's not a relationship. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it was a friend. And rejection hurts, but just know, like, that love, that strong love that you're feeling, don't be ashamed of that, because that is a gift from God. Love is your superpower. All right, guys, that's it. That is a summary of my testimony, and I have so much more details that I want to share with you guys, and we will get to all of that. But for now, go ahead. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, share this on your social media. Don't forget to tag me. I am at Rachel Elise, not Release. I'm Rachel Elise with 3 underscores. You can find me on my blog. My website is rachelelise.com. I cannot wait to hear from you guys.